The farewell gate. Prisha Sharma's fingers tightened around her boarding pass as she moved through Indira Gandhi International Airport's bustling Terminal 3. The monsoon rains lashed against the tall glass windows, turning Delhi's summer evening into a blur of gray. 8 years had passed since she'd last been in this terminal, standing at Gate 27 with tears streaming down her face, watching Vikram Mehta's plane take off toward Barcelona and what they both believed would be his brilliant future. Today was supposed to be a simple business trip to Singapore, a week-long dance workshop she was conducting. At 32, Prisha had transformed her passion for Bharatanatyam into a thriving career, opening her own dance academy in Pune that blended traditional forms with contemporary movements. Dance had become her sanctuary after Vikram, her anchor when their carefully planned future dissolved into sporadic video calls that eventually faded to polite birthday messages and then to nothing at all. Flight SQ421 to Singapore has been delayed due to severe weather conditions. We apologize for the inconvenience, announced a voice over the intercom. The new estimated departure time will be updated shortly. Prisha sighed, tucking a strand of her short-cropped hair behind her ear. She'd cut off her waist-length tresses 3 years ago, a symbolic act of letting go of the girl who had once promised Vikram she'd never change. The memory came unbidden, Vikram's fingers tangled in her hair as they lay on the rooftop of their college hostel, mapping out constellations and futures where they remained together despite the 7,000 kilometers that would soon separate them. "You'll come back," she'd said with naive certainty. "1 year in Barcelona, then we'll make it work." "I'll come back," he had promised, kissing her forehead. "We'll build something amazing together." But 1 year had turned into an extended scholarship, then a prestigious internship with a renowned Spanish architect, then a partnership offer he couldn't refuse. Life had happened, as it tends to do when you're making other plans. Seeking refuge from both memories and the 3-hour delay now displayed. On the departure board, Prisha wandered toward a quiet cafe tucked away in a corner of the terminal. She ordered masala chai, hoping its familiar warmth would settle her unexpected melancholy. As she waited for her drink, she pulled out her tablet to review her workshop notes, but found herself instead scrolling through old photos buried deep in a folder labeled simply V. There they were, younger versions of themselves at Lodi Gardens, at a college festival where her dance troupe had won first prize, at his architecture exhibition where she'd been so proud she thought her heart might burst. The last photo showed them right here at this airport, Vikram's arms wrapped tightly around her, both their faces brave but betraying the heartbreak neither wanted to acknowledge. The barista called out her name, and as Prisha rose to collect, "Her chai," a deep voice ordered in flawless Hindi with the slightest hint of a foreign accent. "Espresso, double shot." "No sugar." Prisha froze, her body recognizing the voice before her mind could process it. She turned slowly, her breath catching, as she found herself looking into familiar dark eyes that widened with equal recognition. "Prisha," the espresso order hung forgotten in the air between them, as Vikram Mehta stood before her, his tall frame draped in a well-cut blazer instead of the faded jeans and kurtas he'd worn in college. His hair was shorter, touches of silver threading through the temples, but his eyes, those eyes that had once known every secret part of her soul, remained unchanged. "Vikram," she managed, her carefully constructed life suddenly feeling like a house of cards in a windstorm. "What are you doing here?" He gestured vaguely toward the departure boards. "Flight to Barcelona got diverted because of the weather. I'm on a 6-hour layover." A small, hesitant smile tugged at his lips. "I didn't expect to run into ghosts today." 8 years of distance, of growth, of becoming different people stretched between them, and yet in that moment, it felt as thin as a boarding pass about to be torn in half. Turbulence of time. The cafe seemed to shrink around them as Prisha and Vikram found themselves at a small table by the window, the storm outside a fitting backdrop to the tempest of emotions swirling between them. Awkward silence gave way to cautious small talk, each careful not to disturb the fragile peace of their unexpected reunion. "Barcelona treated you well," Prisha observed, noticing the confidence in his posture that hadn't been there before. The self-assured way he now carried himself, so different from the passionate but somewhat uncertain architecture student she had loved. Vikram nodded, turning his espresso cup in slow circles. It became home somehow. I never planned to stay that long. His eyes met hers briefly before darting away. Sarada and Associates took a chance on me. Now I'm heading their sustainable urban development projects across southern Europe. He didn't mention the engagement that had fallen apart 2 years ago with Claudia, his Spanish colleague, or how he'd thrown himself into work afterward, designing award-winning green spaces that transformed Barcelona's forgotten neighborhoods. Some details felt too intimate to share in this liminal space between past and present. And you? Your mother mentioned you opened your own dance academy when I called to wish her happy Diwali last year. He'd maintained contact with her parents, even after they'd drifted apart. Another unspoken complexity between them. Prisha's eyebrows rose slightly. You still call my parents? They were family to me for 4 years, Prisha. His voice carried no accusation, just a simple statement of fact. She nodded, feeling a flicker of something, not quite jealousy, but perhaps regret that she'd never reached out to his family after things ended. The academy keeps me busy. 47 students now. We just had our first international tour. What she didn't say was how dance had saved her in the months after they stopped talking. How she'd channeled her heartbreak into movement until her feet bled inside her gungru bells. How each performance became both therapy and armor, protecting her from ever being that vulnerable again. The years after Vikram had been a slow metamorphosis. Prisha had finished her MBA, worked a corporate job she hated for 18 months, then quit dramatically one Tuesday afternoon after her boss criticized her for taking time off to perform at a cultural festival. Within 6 months, she'd opened Abhivyakti Dance Academy in a small rented space, pouring her savings into mirrors and wooden floors. Her parents had been bewildered but supportive. Meanwhile, across continents, Vikram had been forging his own path. The initial year-long program had extended when his professor, impressed by his fusion of Indian architectural principles with modern sustainable design, had recommended him for a prestigious scholarship. The promised return to India kept getting postponed, first by 6 months, then a year, then indefinitely. Their video calls had grown less frequent, conversations more strained. They never officially broke up, just slowly stopped trying to bridge the growing gap between them. The final thread snapped when Prisha didn't attend his sister's wedding, unable to face his family and their questions about a future she was no longer sure existed. Do you remember that time we got caught in the rain at Hauskas village? Vikram asked suddenly, a smile playing at his lips. You were so worried about your new sandals I carried you all the way to the main road. Prisha laughed despite herself. And then you slipped, and we both ended up covered in mud. Your mother was furious when we showed up at your house looking like we'd wrestled in a rice paddy. The shared memory loosened something in Prisha's chest. That was the day you told me about Barcelona. Yes, he acknowledged softly. I never thought it would change everything. Outside, lightning flashed across the sky, briefly illuminating. Their reflections in the window glass. 2 people who once knew each other better than anyone else in the world, now sitting as familiar strangers. I saw your project in Architectural Digest last year, Prisha admitted. The community center in that fishing village. It was beautiful. Surprise flickered across his face. You follow my work? She shrugged, suddenly feeling exposed. I still get the magazine. Old habit. What she didn't tell him was that she kept a folder on her laptop with every article featuring his designs, or how she'd almost booked a trip to Barcelona 3 years ago, only to delete the flight reservation at the last minute. I saw a video of one of your performances too, Vikram confessed. At that TEDx event in Mumbai. Someone shared it on LinkedIn. You watched that? 4 times, he admitted. You've evolved as a dancer. There's something different in your movements now. More strength, more pain, she offered quietly. Authenticity, he corrected. Like you're finally dancing for yourself, not for an audience, not for anyone else. The announcement system crackled to life, informing passengers that due to worsening weather conditions, all departures would be further delayed by at least 3 hours. A collective groan rose from throughout the terminal. "Looks like we're both stuck here a while longer," Vikram said, his eyes holding a question he wasn't quite brave enough to voice. Prisha took a deep breath. 8 years had passed. They were different people now. What harm could a few more hours of conversation do? "I know a better place to wait than this cafe," she found herself saying. "There's a lounge in Terminal 2 that my friend Divya manages. Quieter, better food." For the first time since they'd reconnected, Vikram's smile reached his eyes. "Lead the way, Ms. Sharma." As they gathered their belongings, neither acknowledged the strange twist of fate that had brought them together again in the same place, where they had once said goodbye. Unexpected connection. The premium lounge in Terminal 2 was a sanctuary compared to the chaos outside. Divya had welcomed them with a knowing smile that Prisha studiously ignored, securing them a quiet corner with panoramic views of the runway, where planes sat immobile under sheets of rain. The space around them hummed with soft conversations, and the occasional ping of notifications as fellow stranded travelers settled in for the long wait. "So," Vikram said, leaning back in the plush chair after they'd sampled the buffet offerings, 8 years. It feels both longer and shorter somehow." Prisha nodded, watching raindrops race down the massive windows. "Like we've lived several lifetimes, but also like yesterday." A comfortable silence settled between them, the kind that had once been so natural. Outside, ground crew in bright yellow raincoats scurried across the tarmac, their movements deliberate against the elements. "Did you ever get that tattoo you always talked about?" Vikram asked suddenly. The unexpected question made Prisha laugh. "The constellation?" "Cassiopeia," he confirmed, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "You were obsessed with getting those 5 stars on your shoulder." "I did, actually." She hesitated, then pulled the collar of her blouse slightly to reveal a delicate line of stars tracing the W-shaped constellation just below her collarbone. 2 years ago, though I moved the placement." "It suits you," Vikram said softly, his gaze lingering a moment before returning to his coffee cup. "I remember how we used to sneak onto the hostel roof to stargaze, breaking at least 3 university rules," she added with a grin. "Dr. Malhotra nearly expelled us when he caught us up there during finals week. Worth it, though." The easy reminiscence surprised Prisha. She had spent years carefully avoiding these memories, afraid of the pain they might trigger. Yet here, in this suspended moment between destinations, they felt like old photographs discovered in a forgotten album, still capable of stirring emotion, but somehow less raw than before. "Do you remember Rohan and Nandini?" Vikram asked, reaching for his phone. "They have 3 kids now, the youngest just turned 1. He showed her a family photo of their college friends, Rohan's hair now thinning, Nandini looking remarkably unchanged beside 3 small children with her dimpled smile. "We all thought they'd break up after graduation," Prisha marveled, taking the phone for a closer look. "While everyone bet we'd be the ones to make it," Vikram said quietly, the words hanging in the air between them. The moment stretched, taut, with unspoken thoughts. Finally, Prisha looked up from the phone. "What happened to us, Vic?" she asked, using his old nickname for the first time since they'd reconnected. "Really happened. Not the distance, not the time zones, the real reason." Vikram's expression grew serious as he took back his phone, their fingers briefly touching in the exchange. "I've asked myself that question more times than I can count. And I think," he began, choosing his words carefully, "we were too young to understand that love sometimes requires letting the other person become who they need to be, even if that path leads them away from you." The simplicity and honesty of his answer caught Prisha off guard. She had expected defensiveness, perhaps, or the rehearsed explanations people craft over time to justify their choices. "I was so angry," she admitted, her voice barely audible above the ambient sounds of the lounge. "Not just at you for staying in Barcelona, but at myself for not being enough reason for you to come back." Vikram's face softened with understanding. "It was never about you not being enough, Prisha. You were everything. I just couldn't reconcile the person I was becoming with the promises I'd made as a 22-year-old. A notification chimed on Prisha's phone, a weather alert showing the storm system intensifying over northern India. She glanced at the departure board visible through the lounge entrance. More flights now displayed the dreaded, delayed status. "Looks like we might be here all night," she remarked, putting her phone away. "Would that be so terrible?" Vikram asked, his question carrying more weight than its simple words suggested. Prisha studied him, the familiar stranger across from her, who once knew the rhythm of her heartbeat. The years had matured his features, added subtle lines around his eyes that appeared when he smiled, transformed the eager student into a man who had found his place in the world. Yet something essential remained unchanged, something that still resonated with a part of herself she thought she'd outgrown. "No," she answered truthfully. "It wouldn't be terrible at all." As if responding to some unspoken agreement, they both relaxed, the tension that had surrounded their initial reunion dissolving into something more genuine. Divya appeared with 2 glasses of wine, setting them down with a conspiratorial wink before disappearing again. "Your friend seems to have ideas," Vikram observed, amusement in his voice as he raised his glass in a small toast. "Divya remembers the aftermath," Prisha explained, taking a sip. "She was my roommate the year after we stopped talking." Understanding dawned on Vikram's face. "The year you shaved your hair off? You knew about that? Your brother mentioned it when I ran into him in Mumbai 3 years ago." He looked sheepish. "I may have asked about you." The revelation sent a small thrill through Prisha. "I didn't cut it all off," she protested lightly. "Just went from waist length to a pixie cut." "Everyone acted like I'd had a breakdown. Hadn't you?" he asked gently. Their eyes met across the table, pretenses falling away in the soft lounge lighting. "Maybe," she conceded, "but it grew back. Things heal even when you think they never will." Outside, lightning illuminated the sky in brilliant flashes, the storm showing no signs of abating. Inside, 2 people who had once charted their future together began cautiously mapping the unknown territory of who they had become in each other's absence. Terminal confessions. "Your turn," Prisha said, leaning forward slightly. The remains of their dinner, courtesy of Divya's connections with the lounge chef, sat forgotten between them. 3 hours had slipped by in a blur of conversation that had grown increasingly candid as the night progressed. "Tell me something you never told me back then." Vikram swirled the last of his wine, his expression turning contemplative. The lounge had emptied considerably as some passengers had been rerouted or given accommodation vouchers, leaving them in a quiet bubble of privacy despite the public space. "I almost came back," he finally said. "After my first year in Barcelona, I had a ticket booked and everything." Prisha's breath caught. "What happened?" "Professor Alameda offered me the research position the day before my flight. It was the opportunity. I'd been dreaming of sustainable housing designs that could be implemented in developing urban areas." He set his glass down. "I called to tell you about postponing my return, but you sounded so excited about my coming home that I couldn't bring myself to disappoint you. So I said nothing. And then you just didn't show up," Prisha finished, the old hurt flickering across her face before settling into understanding. "I waited 6 hours at this very airport. I sent that email the night before," he said quietly, "which I didn't see until I got home." She shook her head. "I kept calling your phone." "I turned it off," he admitted. "I was a coward, Prisha. I couldn't bear to hear your voice when you realized I wasn't coming." The confession hung between them, the first truly difficult truth of their conversation. Outside, the storm continued unabated, occasional thunderclaps punctuating their words. "My turn to confess," Prisha said after a moment, tracing patterns on the condensation of her water glass. "I was offered a dance scholarship in London the following year. I turned it down." Vikram's eyebrows rose. "The Royal Academy program? The one you'd been talking about since we met?" She nodded. "I convinced myself I was being practical, that a steady job in Delhi made more sense than chasing an uncertain dance career abroad. She met his eyes directly. But really, I was afraid of becoming like you, of finding something I loved more than what we had together. Oh, Prish, he said softly, her old nickname slipping out naturally. It's okay, she assured him. I found my way to dance eventually, just a different path than I'd imagined. Do you regret it? Not going to London? The question hung in the air as Prisha considered. I used to. Now I think everything unfolded as it needed to. My academy wouldn't exist if I'd gone that route. Vikram nodded slowly. That's how I've come to see Barcelona. Not as the thing that cost me you, but as the detour I needed to become who I am. The announcement system crackled to life, informing passengers that due to continuing severe weather, all remaining flights were canceled until morning. Groans and sighs echoed throughout the terminal as the news spread. Looks like we're officially stranded, Vikram observed. They'll probably offer hotel vouchers soon. Something shifted in Prisha's expression, a decision forming behind her thoughtful eyes. There's no point going to a hotel only to return at dawn. My apartment is 30 minutes away if we can find a taxi willing to brave this weather. The dos invitation hung between them, its implications clear yet undefined. Are you sure? Vikram asked, his voice carefully neutral. Just to wait out the storm, she clarified, though the slight flush on her cheek suggested the boundaries weren't entirely clear to her either. As friends, he repeated, a small smile playing at his lips. Is that what we are now? I don't know what we are, she admitted. Former lovers, old friends, new acquaintances with a complicated history? What would you call it? Unfinished, he said simply. The word resonated through Prisha with unexpected force. Unfinished, like a dance paused mid-movement, like an architectural drawing waiting for its final lines. Not broken or failed, just incomplete. I dated someone for 3 years, she found herself saying. Arnav, he proposed last year. What happened? Vikram asked, his expression carefully composed. I said no. She looked down at her hands. He was wonderful, kind, stable, loved my dance. My parents adored him. But I kept waiting to feel something that never came. She looked up, meeting his gaze directly. The certainty I felt with you at 22. The absolute knowing. The confession hung between them, more intimate than any they'd shared so far. In the subdued lighting of the nearly empty lounge, with rain streaming down the windows beside them, the years seemed to compress. I was engaged, Vikram offered in return. To Claudia, my project partner. It lasted 8 months before we both admitted it wasn't right. What was missing? Prisha asked. Vikram's eyes never left hers. She wasn't you. The simple declaration sent a current through the air between them. 8 years of growth, separate lives, other relationships, and yet here they were, circling, back to the gravitational pull that had drawn them together as college students. We're not those people anymore, Prisha said softly, though whether she was reminding him or herself wasn't entirely clear. No, we're not, Vikram agreed. We're better, more complete. We've lived enough to know what matters. Divya appeared beside their table, breaking the charged moment. They're issuing hotel vouchers at the customer service desk, she informed them. But there's going to be a rush, so you might want to hurry. Thank you for everything tonight, Prisha said, standing and embracing her friend. We actually might not need the vouchers. Divya's knowing smile returned as she glanced between them. I see. Well, the storm's not letting up until morning according to the latest forecast. After she departed, Vikram and Prisha gathered their belongings in a silence heavy with unspoken possibilities. As they made their way through the quiet terminal, their hands brushed accidentally, then deliberately remained touching, fingers tentatively intertwining as if testing forgotten territory. This doesn't have to be anything, Prisha said as they approached the exit where taxis waited, protected from the downpour by the overhanging roof. We can just talk, see where we stand in the morning. Vikram squeezed her hand gently. 8 years ago, we let circumstance decide for us. Whatever happens tonight, let's promise to choose deliberately this time. As the automatic doors opened, releasing them into the humid monsoon night, Prisha felt something shift inside her. Not the reckless certainty of youth, but something steadier. Something that had waited patiently through years of separate journeys to find its moment. I promise, she said, her voice nearly lost in the sound of rain. New Horizons morning arrived with gentle persistence, sunlight filtering through Prisha's curtains to create patterns across her living room floor. The storm had passed some time, before dawn, leaving behind a washed clean world with the fresh scent of rain-soaked earth drifting through her open balcony door. Vikram sat cross-legged on the floor beside her coffee table, sipping chai and scrolling through flight updates. On his phone, they hadn't slept much. After arriving at her apartment, they had talked until sunrise, about everything and nothing, about the people they'd become, about regrets and triumphs and the strange, winding paths that had somehow led them back to each other. There had been moments when the air between them had grown charged with unspoken desire, but neither had acted on it. Some things, they silently agreed, couldn't be rushed a second time. My flight's been rescheduled for this evening, Vikram said, setting down his phone. Yours is at noon. Prisha nodded, curled up in the armchair across from him, wrapped in a soft shawl despite the growing warmth of the morning. 4 hours from now? The unspoken question lingered between them. What now? A night of reconnection, of peeling back layers of time and distance to find something still alive underneath. But was it enough to build something new upon? Come with me to the airport? She asked, her voice betraying a vulnerability she rarely allowed herself these days. Of course, he replied without hesitation. They moved around each other in the small apartment with surprising ease, Prisha packing her suitcase for Singapore, while Vikram made them a simple breakfast of toast and fruit he'd found in her kitchen. The domesticity felt both foreign and familiar, like returning to a childhood home to find the furniture rearranged but the foundations unchanged. Your academy, Vikram said, as they ate at her small dining table beside windows overlooking the city. Tell me more about your vision for it. Prisha's eyes lit up the way they always did when she spoke about dance. I want to expand beyond Pune, maybe open a second location in Mumbai next year. Create a space where traditional forms are honored, but not fossilized, where dancers can find their authentic expression through both classical structures and modern interpretation. Like architectural preservation with contemporary purpose, Vikram observed, smiling at the parallel. Exactly, she exclaimed. It's about building on foundations, not demolishing them. She paused, studying him. What about you? Will you stay in Barcelona forever? The question contained others within it, questions neither was quite ready to voice directly. Vikram set down his fork, considering. I've been thinking about coming back to India, actually. Not permanently, but establishing a branch of our firm here. There's incredible potential for sustainable urban redevelopment in Indian cities. Really? Since when? About 6 months now, he admitted. I've been in talks with potential partners in Mumbai and Delhi. The revelation hung between them, ripe with possibility. Is that why you were in India? Business meetings? Prisha asked. Partly, he nodded. Also my sister's baby shower. I'm going to be an uncle next month. Prisha smiled. Tanvi must be thrilled. She always wanted children. She asked about you, Vikram said quietly. She always does. The taxi ride to the airport was filled with a different quality of silence than their journey the night before, not awkward or tentative, but thoughtful, each lost in private calculations of risk and reward of chance and choice. Indira Gandhi International Airport appeared transformed in the morning light, its glass facades gleaming against the blue sky that had replaced yesterday's turbulent clouds. As they made their way to the departure area for Prisha's Singapore flight, the parallels to their parting 8 years earlier were impossible to ignore. So here we are again, Vikram said as they reached the security checkpoint beyond which he couldn't follow. Same airport, different goodbye. Is it goodbye? Prisha asked, turning to face him fully. Vikram reached for her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm the way he used to when they were students. That depends on what you want, Prish. What do I want? She repeated softly, as if testing the question. For so long, she had carefully constructed her life around not wanting things she couldn't have, around building walls against disappointment. I want not to wonder anymore, about what could have been, about what could still be. I've spent 8 years becoming someone worthy of the way you looked at me back then, Vikram said, his voice steady despite the emotion behind his words. Someone who understands what matters, who wouldn't choose career over love, who wouldn't run from hard conversations. And I've spent 8 years becoming someone who doesn't need anyone else to feel complete, she responded. Someone who built her dreams instead of burying them, who doesn't measure her worth by whether she's chosen or left behind. Maybe that's exactly why this time could be different, he suggested. We're not desperate kids afraid of losing each other anymore. We're adults who know we can stand alone but might choose not to. The final boarding call for Singapore echoed through the terminal, prompting anxious passengers to hurry toward the gate. I have commitments, Prisha said, glancing toward the security line. The workshop in Singapore, summer intensives at the academy, a performance series in Chennai next month. I understand. Vikram nodded, beginning to withdraw his hand. She held on, stopping him. But there's a Barcelona dance festival in September I've been invited to. I was going to decline, but hope flickered across Vikram's face. I know. The organizers. It's held in the plaza beside my favorite cafe. Then perhaps, Prisha said, a slow smile spreading across her face, you could show me how your city has changed you, and I could show you how I dance now. September, he repeated, as if memorizing a sacred date. 3 months. 3 months, she confirmed. Time enough to be certain to make plans deliberately this time. And until then? Until then, we have phones that work across continents, video calls that don't require dial-up internet, and the knowledge that some connections don't break even with years of silence. Vikram stepped closer, gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. May I? He asked, his intention clear. Instead of answering, Prisha rose slightly on her toes, closing the distance between them. Their kiss was gentle, not the desperate embrace of young lovers facing separation, but the mindful connection of two people choosing each other with open eyes. When they parted, Vikram pressed his forehead against hers. Safe travels, Prisha. Sharma. I'll see you in Barcelona. I'll be there, she promised, then added with a playful smile. And if our flights get delayed again, I won't consider it a bad thing. As Prisha finally turned to join the security line, she felt none of the ache that had accompanied their parting years ago. This wasn't an ending but a beginning, not written in the impulsive ink of youth but with the deliberate strokes of experience. Through the large terminal windows, sunlight streamed across the tarmac where planes prepared for takeoff, their destinations mapped on flight plans that could still accommodate unexpected detours. Outside, the world had been washed clean by the night's storm, ready for new growth. Prisha looked back once more to see Vikram still watching her, his smile visible even from a distance. They had said goodbye in this same spot 8 years ago, believing their chapter had closed. Now they understood that some stories don't end. They simply pause, waiting for the right moment to continue. As she boarded her flight to Singapore, Prisha felt a certainty settle in her chest, as clear and solid as the constellation tattooed near her heart. What had begun as a farewell had transformed, through time and chance and choice, into a new horizon stretching before them, unwritten, but full of promise.